You know exactly what you should do. You've known for months. And you keep doing the opposite. The worst part isn't even the failure. The worst part is that you watch yourself do it in real time. You see your hand reaching for the thing that will undo you. You hear the words leaving your mouth that you already know you'll regret. And something inside you just watches. Like a passenger in a car that's drifting toward the guardrail, calm, silent, hands folded in its lap, while you grip the wheel and wonder why you won't just turn it. Most people think self-sabotage is a weakness. A lack of willpower. A character flaw you should be ashamed of. It's none of those things. Self-sabotage is a strategy. A part of you is running a strategy that made sense once, when you were smaller, when the world was more dangerous, when staying invisible was the same as staying alive. And that part never got the memo that you grew up. Here is the idea I want you to hold onto for the next 20 minutes. Self-sabotage isn't a character flaw. It's a shadow you haven't met yet. And the moment you stop fighting it and start naming it, you take back the wheel. Let's go deeper. Think about the last time you sabotaged yourself. Not the big dramatic stuff. The quiet stuff. The email you didn't send. The conversation you avoided. The workout you skipped. The opportunity you let pass because you told yourself you weren't ready. You told yourself a story about why you did it. I was tired. I was busy. The timing wasn't right. I'll do it tomorrow. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. You weren't tired. You were afraid. You weren't busy. You were avoiding. And the part of you that made the decision is not the part of you that tells the story afterward. They are two different things. Carl Jung understood this better than anyone. He said that every person carries a shadow, a hidden self made of everything you repress, deny, and refuse to see. The qualities you're ashamed of. The impulses you pretend you don't have. The anger, the envy, the hunger for attention, the desire to dominate, the urge to run. You push it all underground. You build a clean, acceptable version of yourself and you present that to the world. And you think that's the whole you. It's not even half. Jung said that what you don't bring to consciousness will show up in your life as fate. Read that again in your mind. What you don't bring to consciousness will show up as fate. That means the parts of you you refuse to look at don't disappear. They don't sit quietly in the dark. They operate the machinery from behind the wall. They make your decisions for you. They choose your reactions. They pick your fights. And you call it fate. You call it bad luck. You call it just the way I am. But it's not fate. It's the shadow, driving. Now here is the thing that makes this so difficult. The shadow is not evil. That's the mistake people make. They hear shadow and they think monster. They think darkness means bad. But the shadow is just everything you've exiled from your self-image. And some of what you've exiled is your power. Think about that. You didn't just repress your anger. You repressed your assertiveness. You didn't just repress your selfishness. You repressed your ambition. You didn't just repress your aggression. You repressed your drive. The same energy that could fuel your growth is the energy you cut off because you were afraid of what it would make you. So you walk around half-powered, wondering why you can't seem to push through, why you stall at the threshold, why you sabotage the very thing you say you want. You sabotaged it because the part of you that wants it is the part you trust. And the part of you that's afraid of what wanting it would require is the part that's in charge. That's the truth nobody wants to say out loud. The part of you that's afraid is not weaker than the part of you that's brave. It's older. It's been there longer. It has more practice. It knows exactly which buttons to press, which doubts to whisper, which excuses will work on you because it's been using them for years. You are not losing to a weaker opponent. You are losing to a very skilled one. And you can't defeat a skilled opponent by pretending it doesn't exist. That's what most people do. They pretend. They white-knuckle their way through discipline, they grip tighter, they try harder, they push the shadow down further, and they wonder why it comes back harder every time. You cannot defeat what you refuse to see. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you sat down and had an honest conversation with the part of you that doesn't want you to succeed? Not a metaphor. Not a journaling exercise. I mean, when did you actually stop, get quiet, and ask yourself what you're afraid of? Not what you think you should be afraid of. Not the answer you'd give a therapist to sound self-aware. The real answer. The ugly one. The one that sounds small and petty and embarrassing. I'm afraid people will expect more of me if I succeed and I won't be able to deliver. I'm afraid that if I actually try and fail, it means I'm not enough. I'm afraid that if I become the person I say I want to become, the people around me will treat me differently and I'll lose them. I'm afraid that I'm secretly not capable and that success would expose me. That's the shadow talking. And it's not wrong to feel those things. It's human. But what you do with those feelings, that's where your life is decided. Because here's what the shadow does if you ignore it. It doesn't just sit in the dark feeling afraid. It acts. It engineers situations that confirm its fears. This is what Robert Greene identified as the law of self-sabotage. You unconsciously create the very circumstances you fear most. You're afraid of being exposed as not good enough, so you procrastinate until the deadline is so tight that even a great performance looks mediocre. Then you say, "See, I just ran out of time." You're afraid of rejection, so you pull away first. You withdraw, you go cold, you pick a fight over something small so you can leave before you get left. Then you say, "See, relationships just don't work for me." You're afraid of success, so you get close to the edge and then you do something reckless. You drink. You spend. You say something unforgivable. You blow it up just before it becomes real. Then you say, "See, I just can't catch a break." But you caught it. You caught it and you threw it back. The shadow is not your enemy. But it is the most dangerous thing in your life until you learn to look at it. Now let me bring in something the Stoics understood deeply, because this is where most modern psychology stops short. It tells you to understand your shadow. It doesn't tell you what to do with your desires. And that's where the real leverage is. The Stoics made a distinction that most people never encounter, and it changes everything once you internalize it. They separated desire from what they called preferred indifference. A preferred indifferent is something you'd rather have than not have. Success, wealth, recognition, health, a good relationship. These are fine to pursue. But they are not good in themselves. They don't define you. They don't determine your worth. And here is the critical part. You can want them without needing them. That's the whole game. Wanting wisely versus wanting desperately. Most people don't sabotage themselves because they want too much. They sabotage themselves because they want desperately. They've attached their entire identity to the outcome. If I get this, I'm worthy. If I don't, I'm nothing. And when the self that believes it's nothing starts to feel the real possibility of becoming something, the shadow panics. Because if you succeed and you're still not enough, then the excuse is gone. The story is over. And that is terrifying. So you sabotage. Not because you don't want the thing. Because you want it so badly that the possibility of getting it and still feeling empty is worse than never trying. Do you see what's happening? The sabotage isn't the problem. The sabotage is the symptom. The problem is that you've made the outcome responsible for your worth. You've handed your self-respect to something outside your control. And the shadow knows this. The shadow knows that no amount of external success will fill the gap, so it decides you might as well not try. At least if you don't try, you can tell yourself the story that you could have. The Stoics saw this clearly. Epictetus said it plainly. Make the best use of what is in your power, and take the rest as it happens. That's not passivity. That's precision. You pour everything into what you control, your effort, your discipline, your response, your character, and you release your grip on the outcome. Not because the outcome doesn't matter. Because your worth was never supposed to be attached to it in the first place. When you decouple your worth from the result, something shifts. The desperation thins out. The shadow loses its sharpest weapon. Because now you're not pursuing success to prove you're enough. You're pursuing it because it's what you do. Because excellence is a practice, not a plea. Because the act itself is the reward, and anything beyond that is a bonus. That's wanting wisely. That's the Stoic way. And it defangs the shadow, because the shadow feeds on desperation. It feeds on the gap between who you are and who you're afraid you're not. Close the gap by anchoring your worth in what you control, and the shadow goes quiet. Not gone. Quiet. There's a difference. Now let's talk about the moment of sabotage itself. The exact moment. Because this is where most people lose, and it's where you can win. You're in the gym. You're on the last set. Your muscles are burning and your mind says stop. You're at your desk. You've been working for 2 hours and your mind says check your phone. You're in a conversation that matters and your mind says deflect, make a joke, change the subject, don't go there. You're 1 week into a new habit and your mind says what's the point, this isn't working, quit. That voice. That precise, reasonable, almost gentle voice that says you've done enough, you deserve a break, it's not that serious, you can start again tomorrow. That voice is not your friend. And it is not telling you the truth. David Goggins calls this the 40% rule. When your mind tells you you're done, you've used 40% of your capacity. The first voice that says stop is a liar. It is not reporting reality. It is reporting the shadow's preference for safety. And the shadow is very convincing, because it doesn't sound like a saboteur. It sounds like you. It uses your voice. It uses your vocabulary. It borrows your reasoning. It says the same things you'd say to a friend who needed a break. That's what makes it so dangerous. It doesn't sound like an enemy. It sounds like self-care. Comfort isn't self-care. Comfort is a painkiller. It numbs you without treating anything. And the shadow loves comfort, because comfort is the path of least resistance, and the path of least resistance is the path that keeps you exactly where you are. Small. Safe. Stuck. Here's what you need to understand about that voice. It is not the whole you. It is a part of you. A fragment. A very old, very frightened fragment that learned a long time ago that trying and failing hurts, and it would rather you not try at all. And the way you defeat a fragment is not by arguing with it. You defeat it by acting past it. You hear the voice. You acknowledge it. You don't obey it. That's the practice. That's the entire practice. You hear the voice that says stop, and you take one more step. You hear the voice that says check your phone, and you keep working. You hear the voice that says don't send it, and you hit send. You hear the voice that says it's too hard, and you do the hard thing anyway. Not because you feel like it. Not because you've overcome the fear. Because you've decided that the fear is not in charge. You are. And every time you act past the voice, you weaken it. Every time you obey the voice, you strengthen it. That's how neural pathways work. That's how habits work. That's how identity works. You are always voting for who you become, and every act of self-sabotage is a vote for the self you don't want to be. But here's the good news. Every act of discipline is a vote for the self you do want to be. And the votes compound. Let me give you something concrete. Not a platitude. A practice. Tonight, before you sleep, sit somewhere quiet. Not in bed. Not with your phone. A chair. The floor. The bathroom if you have to. Somewhere you can be alone with yourself for 5 minutes. And I want you to ask one question. Not what do I want? Not what should I do with my life? Something simpler and more dangerous. What is the part of me afraid of right now? And then wait. Don't answer fast. Don't give the answer you think sounds good. Sit in the silence and let the ugly answer surface. The one that says I'm afraid I'm not smart enough. I'm afraid people will see through me. I'm afraid I'll be alone. I'm afraid I'll succeed and still feel empty. When it comes, and it will come, if you're patient enough to let it, don't judge it. Don't argue with it. Don't try to fix it. Just look at it. That's the shadow. That's the part of you that's been running your sabotage from behind the wall. And you just dragged it into the light. Do this every night for a week. 5 minutes. One question. What is the part of me afraid of right now? You will be shocked by what you find. And you will be more shocked by how quickly it starts to lose its grip. Because the shadow's power is in being unseen. That's its only real weapon. Secrecy. The moment you look at it directly, the moment you name it, it shrinks. Not because you've defeated it with logic. Because you've removed the one thing it needs to survive. Your refusal to see it. Most people will never do this. Most people will spend their entire lives running from a shadow they could face in 5 minutes of honest silence. They'll build elaborate stories about why they can't move forward. They'll blame their upbringing, their circumstances, their temperament, their star sign, their attachment style. And some of those things are real. Some of them shaped you. But none of them are the reason you're stuck. You're stuck because you won't look at the thing that's holding you in place. You keep fighting it with willpower when you should be facing it with honesty. Willpower is a hammer. The shadow is not a nail. You can't smash what you can't see. But you can illuminate it. You can sit with it. You can say, I see you. I know what you're afraid of. I know why you're afraid. And I'm not going to let you drive anymore. That's not a mantra. That's a decision. And it's one you have to make every day. Because the shadow doesn't go away. Jung never said you kill the shadow. He said you integrate it. You bring it inside the circle. You acknowledge that the fear is yours, that the anger is yours, that the hunger is yours, that the desire to run is yours. You don't act on all of it. But you stop pretending it's not there. And the paradox is this. The more honestly you face your darkness, the less power it has over your actions. The people who deny their shadow completely are the ones most controlled by it. The people who admit it, look at it, name it, those are the ones who move through the world with real self-control. Not the brittle kind that cracks under pressure. The kind that bends because it knows itself. Now I want to come back to something. Because I told you earlier that self-sabotage isn't a character flaw. It's a shadow you haven't met. And I want you to feel the weight of what that means. It means the thing you've been calling your worst enemy is actually a part of you that's trying to protect you in the only way it knows how. Badly. Clumsily. With outdated information. But protect you. It thinks small is safe. It thinks invisible is survival. It thinks if you never try, you never fail, and if you never fail, you never have to feel the pain of being not enough. It's wrong. But it's not malicious. It's afraid. And when you meet it with that understanding, something shifts. You stop fighting yourself. You start leading yourself. There's a difference. Fighting yourself is exhausting. It's two hands pushing against each other and neither one moves. Leading yourself is different. It's acknowledging the fear, hearing the objection, and then making the decision anyway. Not with cruelty. With clarity. I hear you. I understand why you're afraid. And we're doing this anyway. That's what discipline actually is. Not punishment. Not rigidity. Not grinding yourself into the ground. Discipline is the act of hearing the voice that says stop and choosing to move forward because you've decided who you want to be is more important than what you feel like doing right now. Marcus Aurelius understood this. He carried the weight of an empire. He dealt with betrayal, plague, war, the slow erosion of everything he built. And in his private notes to himself, he kept returning to one idea. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He wasn't being poetic. He was being practical. The world will do what it does. People will disappoint you. Plans will collapse. The shadow will whisper. And none of that matters if you understand that the only thing you actually control is your response. Your response to the obstacle. Your response to the fear. Your response to the voice that says you can't. That's your territory. That's where your sovereignty lives. And every time you exercise it, you expand it. Every time you surrender it, you shrink. So let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you stopped obeying the voice that tells you to stay small? Not hypothetically. Really think about it. What would today look like? What would this week look like? What would this year look like if, every time the voice said stop, you took one more step? If every time the voice said don't try, you tried? If every time the voice said it's too hard, you did it anyway? You'd be unrecognizable. Not because you'd become someone else. Because you'd finally become who you actually are. The sabotage has been keeping you smaller than your real size. And the tragedy isn't that you've been failing. The tragedy is that you've been succeeding at the wrong thing. You've been brilliantly, consistently, relentlessly successful at keeping yourself contained. That takes effort. That takes strategy. That takes a kind of discipline, just pointed in the wrong direction. What if you redirected it? What if you took that same energy and aimed it at growth instead of containment? Here's what nobody tells you. The discipline you've been using to hold yourself back is the same discipline you need to move forward. It's the same muscle. You've just been flexing it in the wrong direction. Turn it around. The shadow doesn't disappear. But it stops being the driver and becomes the passenger. It sits in the back seat, still afraid, still whispering, still preferring the safe road. And you sit in the front. Hands on the wheel. Eyes on the road. And you drive anyway. Let me bring this all together. Because I want you to walk away from this with something you can use. Not a feeling. A framework. First. Acknowledge the shadow. Stop pretending you don't have one. Stop performing the version of yourself that has it all figured out. You don't. Nobody does. And the people who look like they do are usually the ones running hardest from their own darkness. Sit with yourself. Ask what you're afraid of. Listen to the answer. Don't judge it. Just hear it. Second. Decouple your worth from the outcome. Want things. Pursue things. Care about the result. But do not make the result responsible for your value as a human being. You are not what you achieve. You are what you do with what you have, including your fear, including your shadow, including the voice that says stop. That's Stoic preference over desperate desire. That's wanting wisely. Third. Act past the voice. When the mind says stop, you're at 40%. When the mind says you can't, it's lying. When the mind says tomorrow, tomorrow is a fiction. There is only now. One more step. One more rep, one more honest sentence. One more act of choosing who you want to be over what you feel like doing. Fourth. Name the saboteur. Not to others. To yourself. Give it a name, give it a shape, give it a voice. Not to mock it. To see it clearly. When you can say, that's the part of me that's afraid of being seen, you've taken the first real step toward freedom. Because you've separated yourself from the fear. You are not the fear. You are the one observing the fear. And the one observing is always more powerful than the thing being observed. Fifth. Do this every day. Not when you feel motivated. Not when the conditions are right. Every day. Especially when you don't feel like it. Especially when the shadow is loud. Especially when the old excuses are knocking. That's when it matters. That's when the vote counts. Now let me tell you something about what this costs you. Because you need to hear it. Every day you spend obeying the shadow is a day you don't get back. Every opportunity you let pass, every conversation you avoid, every challenge you retreat from, that's not a neutral choice. That's a cost. You're paying for it with your life. With your one life. The time you spend staying small is time you will never recover. And one day, the time runs out. And the question won't be why was I so afraid? The question will be what did I do with the fear? Did I let it drive? Or did I drive past it? You still don't feel whole. I know. You still don't feel like the person you were supposed to become. I know that too. But wholeness doesn't come from becoming someone new. It comes from finally meeting the parts of yourself you've been running from. The shadow is not your enemy. It's the last piece of you that hasn't been welcomed home. And when you stop fighting it and start facing it, something remarkable happens. You stop being at war with yourself. And a person who is not at war with themselves is unstoppable. Not because they have no fear. Because they've made peace with the fear. They've heard it, named it, and walked past it. So here is where I leave you. Self-sabotage isn't a character flaw. It's a shadow you haven't met. And the moment you stop fighting it and start naming it, you take back the wheel. You've known what to do for months. Maybe years. The question was never what. The question was whether you'd finally stop watching yourself and start leading yourself. The shadow will be there tomorrow morning. Waiting. Whispering. Offering you the comfortable exit, the easy excuse, the familiar smallness. And you will hear it. And you will look at it. And you will say, I see you. I know what you're afraid of. And we're moving forward anyway. Stay disciplined.